President Trump also confirmed that U.S. forces have secured oil fields in northeast Syria after concerns were raised that an American withdrawal would allow for Washington's regional enemies to take over the massive crude reservoirs.
We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about, the oil that everybody was worried about. The U.S. has control of that, and there are no shots being fired.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, who is on an official visit to Afghanistan, elaborated on President Trump's statement. Speaking to reporters in the city of Kabul this morning, Esper noted that discussions are being held about possibly keeping a residual U.S. force in Syria to, among others, safeguard the referred to oil fields.
Well, let me just say that the troops, we have troops in towns in northeast Syria that are located next to the oil fields. The troops in those towns are not in the present phase of withdrawal. The present phase of withdrawal from northeast Syria involves those troops up along the border, if you will, principally at the Kobani LZ at this point in time. So that, as I said yesterday, this withdrawal will take weeks, not days. Until that time, our forces will remain in the towns that are located near the oil fields. The purpose of those forces, working with the SDF, is to deny access to those oil fields by ISIS and others who may benefit from their revenues that could be earned. I've made no decision with regard to various options. Those are things that we would have to present to the president in due course.
It is important to know that prior to arriving to Afghanistan, Secretary Mark Esper announced that all of the nearly 1,000 U.S. troops withdrawing from northern Syria were expected to move to western Iraq, where they will continue to take an active role in the global campaign against the Islamic State, as well as preserve Washington's interests in the country amid growing Iranian influence. Now to Syria's Kamishli, where a Kurdish news agency uploaded a video purporting to show local Kurdish residents hurling rocks at U.S. armored vehicles as American troops drove through the northern border town. It was not immediately clear whether the American convoy was withdrawing from the town or whether it was patrolling the area because of the fact that the northeastern Al-Hasaka governorate, where Kamishli is situated, is the source of nearly half of Syria's extracted oil. Meanwhile, in Brussels, the European Council President Donald Tusk insisted that the U.S. brokered cessation of hostilities was not a genuine ceasefire, but rather a demand that the Kurds capitulate to Turkey's will. President Tusk, who is a vocal critic of Turkey, also reiterated his call to put a permanent end to Ankara's military action immediately.
So-called ceasefire, this is not what we expected. In fact, it's not a ceasefire, it's a demand of capitulation of the Kurds. And I think that we have to be very consistent here. And we have to reiterate our call for Turkey to put a permanent end to its military action immediately.
Talking about the latest developments in Syria from the Turkish city of Istanbul, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan emphasized that unless Kurdish forces comply with the U.S. brokered agreement, Turkey will resume its military operation to assure its goals are met. Speaking to thousands of his supporters, the Turkish leader also said he would discuss the deployment of Syrian government forces in Ankara's envisioned safe zone in northern Syria during his scheduled meeting tomorrow with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Regardless of the Russian deployment, President Erdogan warned Moscow that Ankara would implement its own plans if a solution was not reached.